We're trying a virtual table talk with the superintendent for our first time. And we hope that this isn't something that we're going to have to do very often. We want to be able to get back together and have table talks in person and face to face, and be able to see all you guys. But unfortunately, we're all, I think, getting used to the world of virtual meetings. We all know a whole lot more about Zoom and Google Chats and all of that than we all thought we would about a month ago. So kind of here's what we're going to do. And I am occasionally I'll have to stop and admit some more people who are waiting to get in. But I'm going to turn it over here in just a second to Dr. Thomas, and she'll give a kind of a few words. And then I think the easiest thing is going to be for us to, if I could see everybody's face, then you could wave your hand if you have a question and I could call on you. But not everybody has their faces on here. So, as he does. So what I'm going to do, if you look down in the bottom right corner, I think there should be 3 dots. Is that right, Morgan? Oh, sorry, I need to unmute Morgan.
Yes, that is correct. Okay,
there's 3 little dots. And if you click on them, there's one that should say raise your hand, I believe. Or, so we can try that way to raise your hand, and then I can call on you, and then you can ask a question. Or you can wave if you're on the camera, and we can do it that way. Or we can, I'm not sure if there's any other way. So we're figuring this out.
You can use the chat feature as well.
Oh yeah, or we can try the chat feature.
Yeah, the chat feature.
Monitoring the, I'm also monitoring the participants to let them in, so I'm not sure if I can see chat as well. So anyway, all right, Dr. Thomas, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first virtual Superintendent Table Talk. Based on the participation, this may be the new mode for engaging our parents. I see some faithful faces on the screen of people who've come out to the table talks that we've had. Hi, Janie. Hi, Leslie and Cassie. I see some of the familiar faces again from the virtual table talks that we've had over at East Social Cafe. Really missing being able to get out there. But this seems to be our new reality these days. So I thank you all for joining us. And while I have everybody on the screen, I want everybody, all the moms out there, give yourselves a pat on the back. Here's my applause to you, and to thank you so much for trusting us and in joining us with this virtual online platform. It has been a huge learning experience for all of us, for us as educators, and I know for you as parents. And we wouldn't be able to continue without your help. Everybody is in uncharted territory, but I have to hand it to our parents and our teachers, everybody in the school district and in our community for embracing and trusting and just playing along, because that is so important for us to be on the same page together for our kiddos. I want to recognize a couple of people on the screen. I want to thank Morgan Hubbard from our Board of Trustees for joining us. Also have Henry Gideon, our Assistant Soup for Operations, and they're on the screen. Oh, there's Dr. Sermani, Assistant Soup for School Support. So I think we've got the main players on the screen who are able to, if I don't know the answer to one of your questions, one of us on the screen should be able to address it. And if we don't know the answer, we promise that we'll get it back to you. So just a couple of more tidbits and we can turn it over to Q&A, because I know you all probably have some questions that you want to ask. From a superintendent's viewpoint, we are all on pins and needles, waiting to hear what the governor is going to announce on Friday afternoon. That's really going to let us know whether we're going to continue in this teaching and learning mode until the end of the year, or whether he's going to allow us to open up in some capacity with certain guidelines. And none of us, everybody's speculating, but I'm not even going to go down the speculation route because we really have to wait for his direction. The other piece of information out there for our parents, and I think I shared this with our PTA moms yesterday, 93% of our kiddos have accessed online learning. And as of last Friday, about 78% of the kids are completing 3 out of 4 core assignments. Those are some amazing numbers because our teachers have been outreaching and making sure that they know where all of their kiddos are. District-wide, out of 8,158 kids, we're down to the last 20 kids that we have not been able to make contact with. And that's probably because we're assuming that they've moved, they've just left the area, and they didn't have a chance to notify the schools. But our people in school support out of Elva Torres's office have really done a phenomenal job of working with our campuses, our teachers and principals, and trying to make sure that we've touched every single child in our district. And if we've not been able to touch them, that we've turned every possible stone to try to find out where they are. So I think it's pretty incredible to be down to your last 20 children that you've not been able to make contact with. And the only thing we've not done is physically gone out to look for them, obviously because of our stay-at-home orders. So I will stop yakking because I could probably go on, and let me take a breath and let's start taking some comments or some questions. And if we can be mindful of our airtime, I think it'll give everybody an opportunity to kind of chime in or ask their question. And if we run out of time here today, please, you can always email me directly, or Mr. Gideon or Dr. Shamani, Mr. Robinson, and we'll be happy to give you an individual one-on-one phone call if you just need to discuss something with us about your child in particular, and we can help out in that manner. Okay.
So if anybody has a question or a comment, you can raise your hand if I see you on the screen, and I'll unmute you. Otherwise, if you go over to the chat, you can just say, I have a question, or just put in a question mark, and I'll unmute you. Katisha Jones, thank you for your comment. She just said, no question, just a comment. The contact rate between students and teachers is excellent. Thank you for sharing that data. So yeah, thank you for your comment. Who has a question? Cheney, you normally have lots of questions at table.
You always have a question.
Should I unmute you, Cheney? Raise your hand if you have something to say. Okay. Hey, Cheney.
Hi, how are y'all?
We're good.
Good. Well, I just wanted to first give a kudos for the communication about graduation. Those 2 backup dates and what we're scheduling, hopefully, for the end of May is awesome. I know that's super appreciated. I don't have kids that are near that level yet, but, you know, we all feel for those seniors that may have missed out if you guys hadn't gotten on scheduling something for them and those 2 backup dates. So that's super appreciated. I've heard a lot of grateful parents in that aspect. So thank you for that.
Yep, and next week the kids will do a drive-by and pick up their caps and gowns. So you're gonna see social media go nuts with kids posting pictures in their caps and gowns. So that'll be exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
That's
Mr.
wonderful.
Christian's organizing that. You'll get, if you have a senior, you'll be notified of that pickup time at the high school.
Awesome. So I did have a question, just kind of, I know the city has done a round of layoffs. I was just curious as to what the financial impact of this virus thus far is to the ISD and what impact that's going to have for our staff in general, if any, and then kind of part 2, how is this impacting contract renewals, recruitment, planning for next year, and what what is the plan to move that forward during this interesting time?
Well, I'm happy to report that as far as our district finances, we are on really solid ground. We have always operated conservatively. We've always been mindful of having our reserve funds, our quote rainy day funds. Our chief financial officer gave a report out to the board just last Thursday in a workshop talking about what the outlook for next year is. We are building budgets on anticipating zero growth, which is highly unlikely. And we're building budgets based on 5% growth. Because if you look around us, the construction is continuing. Real estate agents are continuing to close on homes. We might not have the expected 5% growth that the demographers had originally predicted, but we don't anticipate a decline. And should there be a decline, which really determines the amount of money that comes into the school district, we have money in reserves to weather a storm. Now, we don't have money in reserves to weather a 5-year storm, but we could certainly hang on. 2020, 2021, we're going to be fine for this coming school year. Again, whether we had zero growth or whether we have 5% growth. So we're feeling good about that. We're not in any way looking at staff cuts or furloughs or reduction in staff or anything of that nature. We've tried to reassure our staff. And we're even looking at a possible pay increase for the next school year. So we want to take care of our people, recognize their loyalty and recognize their work to the school district. And I know our school board is 100% behind sending any type of confidence out to our staff and to our community. So our principals are busy hiring. They have the approval to move forward hiring for any replacement. So if somebody resigned, they're allowed to hire that replacement. And in high need areas, in bilingual education, special education, high need areas, we're proceeding with hiring those staff members because we want to make sure that we get them on board before they're snatched up with anybody else. Now we are holding back a little on some of the growth positions just to be on the safe side. But we're not cutting staff or cutting salaries in any way, shape, or form right now.
Thanks, Cheney. Couple of questions that have come in. One, David says, I understand that there has not been a firm date on rescheduling Hutto High School graduation, but if this happens, is there any discussion on changing the venue to a different location? Actually, David, the high school right now, graduation is still scheduled or is as originally scheduled. We all know that that's possible, that it could change. But actually, the high school does have two backup dates for the Cedar Park Center. One is June the 20th, I believe, and the other one is July the 18th. So we do have two backup dates for that. And that was included in that parent communication that went out on Tuesday. Certainly want to encourage you guys, be sure and read those. We send them out every week. And I know we duplicate a lot of the information, so it's probably easy to skip over some things and miss some new things. So because we put a lot of things over and over and over again because we want to be sure that you guys see them. So, but we do have a couple of backup dates scheduled for that.
Thanks, Todd. I was just curious though. I know the numbers keep going up every month, and according to the health experts and CDC, tech's supposed to hit its peak on the 20th of this month. And with the postponed dates, my question was like, has there been any discussion to have it at a different venue? I know it's scheduled at Cedar Park, and that's an enclosed building. And I don't know what the limitations are if we're still going to be practicing, the 6-foot social distancing. I'm just curious if they've if anyone's had any discussion to have it at different venues. Like, for example, I know it's a different school district, but the Pflugerville School District has a football stadium. It's fairly new. It's probably about 3 years old, but it's called the Field. And that is a big enough place to actually hold, a graduation. I know it's outdoors, but that would be a lot safer environment than holding it inside an enclosed environment like the HEB Cedar Park area.
Sure.
Yeah. And Mr. Avila, we have had that conversation. As a matter of fact, personally, I'm a huge fan of twilight graduations at 8:30. Once you get into June and July, having a twilight graduation at 8:45, 9 o'clock at night as the sun is setting out on a football field. I think there's something very special about graduating on your own home turf anyway. The only reason we go to the HEB Center is out of comfort and out of having everybody in an enclosed center. But to me, it's not ideal. They shuttle us in like cattle. We're only allowed to be there for 2 hours, and then they push you out. So, I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages both ways. But yes, we have had conversations with Mr. Christian about possibly holding a twilight graduation on our home football field. However, that's not been solidified. It all depends, like you said, on what's happening with the outbreaks in our area and practicing safe social distancing. So we're open to all possibilities, but we are committed to holding some sort of a graduation ceremony for our seniors and making sure that we make that a special event for them.
Okay, thank you for your response, Selena.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Priscilla asked, she said her son attends Doc Curley, and she wants to say thank you to his teachers for doing such a wonderful job moving lessons online. She has a question of if teachers have expressed bandwidth issues. If so, what is the IT department doing to educate teachers on ways to reduce bandwidth issues with Google Classroom?
I have to tell you, unless Dr. Sermani or Mr. Gideon chime in, we have not had that I'm aware of, a single issue brought to our attention regarding bandwidth. Mr. Gideon, Mr. Sermani, any?
I have not had any reported to me issues. I've had a couple of staff persons who live in areas where they don't have bandwidth, and so we've had to troubleshoot that. There was no cell phone service where they lived. They lived out in the country somewhere. But no,
Right.
no, I haven't heard anything from the parent side.
And we have a pretty beefy help desk system that's set up not only to support parents, but also our staff. I've not had any reports of bandwidth other than what we are obviously trying to manage are families that may not have access to internet access. And so the hotspot process has started this week with about 100 families that have gotten some hotspots. I know that the IT department has gone above and beyond to help parents who may have access, for example, to Spectrum and others, of how to navigate the special offers that some of these bandwidth providers are making available. But again, I've not had any comment or feedback from staff having issues. We do have staff members that obviously live in areas where they don't have internet, so we've had to accommodate or find ways to accommodate. But to my knowledge, our help desk is being as proactive and helping with a variety of things, and including some laptop return initiatives that we're doing right now.
Valerie says, Henry,
There it is.
Valerie said, I know there are a lot of concerned parents with the lockdown being lifted too early. If it is lifted, what will be done for the kids if parents are not comfortable with letting their kids go back to school? Plus, since we are told to be distant, what does that do for each class that has over 10 students?
Yes, and that's all part of what's the governor going to ask of our schools. So I know I had this question from our PTA moms yesterday, and if we are allowed to reopen, will we give our parents the option of continuing with online learning or coming on back onto campuses. And obviously, we would offer that option. You know, what that would look like, we have no idea just yet. But we certainly, we realize there's kids or families who may have just overall health concerns, or children whose immunities are compromised by being around other health conditions, especially the COVID-19. So just stay tuned and work with us, and continue to ask those questions. We have ongoing meetings here internally to look at possible scenarios that are coming up that are still unknown.
Okay. Who else has a question? Janie. There you go.
So just kind of talking more about like the technology that we've been using during this time, has there been discussion about continuing any of this technology use in the classroom or in the curriculum, such as delivery of lessons or utilizing Google Classroom for organizing and tracking assignments, giving parents that visibility? Like what are the positives that we're taking away from this?
Oh, no, most definitely. And I think that is one of the huge positives, and I'll let Dr. Sermani chime in here in just a second as well. This was part of our technology plan. As a matter of fact, at our March board meeting, right in the middle of all this closure, we just hired a brand new director of technology and digital learning, and he presented the technology plan for the district. And part of that plan included a rollout of one-to-one, where children would be given their devices and they'd be able to take them home and keep them there for the year. Obviously, it was a long-range plan into the future, but this whole COVID-19 has kind of accelerated that plan, because along with handing kiddos devices, you have to look at the training for the teachers and, of course, training for the kids. So all of that has been just accelerated to just levels that we didn't expect. As a matter of fact, this week, as I'm speaking, our instructional technologists are rolling out online learning modules for our teachers, because while we had some teachers that were really go-getters and really savvy and were ready to hit this online learning from even before this closure, we still had others that were kind of taking their time. They were going to dabble in learning how to do it, but only when they really had to. So now we're in this situation where everybody's had to. So yes, to answer your question, I think this whole online learning platform is really going to change how our classrooms are going to look coming back. I think teachers are discovering the power of being able to accelerate their own teaching and learning, because now they've got options within their classrooms. So we're excited about this unintended accelerated learning that has occurred with our teaching staff, and we're excited about the possibilities that it's going to bring once we're back in session. So extremely excited. But I'll let Dr. Sermani also chime in. And Dr. Sermani, if you could move closer to your mic. When you spoke a little while ago, your voice sounded really far away.
If I move close, you have to see me closer too.
Or just speak louder.
Well, Dr. Thomas, I think you pretty much said everything. I think the idea that we're going to go back to school the same way we left it is, I think that's just not reality. We've all changed as the kids have changed as learners, and the adults have changed as how they produce instruction. Certainly, we don't want to go to a whole online version like we're now, but like you said, there are lessons learned about how you can individualize a child's learning experience, and that kids can work independently and have an individualized learning experience within a classroom with four walls, where another child who has trouble self-directing, the teacher can be working with those children while other children can self-direct and then you have more of a touch base system within the classroom. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting possibilities. You know, we had a long range plan to begin to move in some of these directions at particular grade levels, but like Dr. Thomas said, everything has just accelerated itself. And so I actually have a team of people who are working, actually funny enough, you bring this up, this afternoon at 3 o'clock, we're actually answering that very question you asked. I had given them the homework from last week to meet with their teams and ask these series of questions. I also asked all the principals to ask their staffs these series of these questions so we can begin to gather what has changed, which obviously dictates how we prepare for the school year during the summer. And so that's the question of the day that we're going to be working on this afternoon. How does education change because of what's happened in a positive way?
Thanks, Dr. Smythe. And while we have 28 people on here right now, which is fantastic, and I want to take this opportunity to just say, you know, I was just looking at the calendar. Exactly 1 month ago today, March the 16th, was the beginning of spring break. And Dr. Sermani and his team have done an amazing job of it. When you think about that, we left for spring break, or we left on March the 13th, thinking we were going to have a spring break. And then we came back on that Monday, March the 16th, those of us in district leadership, to basically start planning for what it was going to look like to not be back in school. And where we are now, exactly 1 month from the beginning of spring break, to what our kids are doing, what our teachers are doing with online learning and everything else, is actually very phenomenal. Because none of us had any idea what in the world we were going to do and what this was going to look like. Nobody in the country had any idea. So kudos to Dr. Sermani and his team for what they've done with our teachers and our staff. Yeah, I just wanted to let that be known. Okay, Priscilla has a question. Hang on, Priscilla, let me unmute you.
Hi, going back to the question regarding online learning, should schools reopen before parents feel comfortable? Is the online learning option only for immune compromised students, or will that option be available for everyone?
No, not at all. I think, yes, we would think of those children first, obviously, but it would definitely be an option that we would have to give all of our parents. There's no way that we could possibly override a parent's concern for the health and safety of their children.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who else has a question? Katisha Hutto was at the head of the class with their response. Thank you for taking the lead to distribute technology as quickly as you did. It resulted in a high contact rate. Yes. Let me just say something, and then Dr. Thomas will probably add to this. Our technology people were amazing. And if you don't know, if you didn't see it in some of the things that we put out there, our technology distributed over 3,000 Chromebooks in about 2 days. In the process of, you know, our theme this year is Hippo Nation is better together. And our technology department, our operations people, our maintenance people, our high school leadership team, our district administrative team, all those folks chipped in, and we were able to have a system in place that we handed out over 3,000 Chromebooks in 2 days, which I don't think any of us ever imagined that we could do something like that. So once again, you know, Hippo Nation stepped up and just did what we had to do. Dr. Thomas, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes, and I could, yes, just echo your remarks. And it's actually 3,200, but, you know, who's getting down to specifics? But yes, it was an amazing team effort. And I think that our technology department only has 8 people. So those 8 men and Gloria Gibbons, who's the administrative assistant, and everybody else who chipped in, because I don't know if our parents realize it's not like we had these Chromebooks were not just sitting in classrooms. They were sitting in classrooms, but they were in these massive computer carts that had to be disassembled and taken apart. Then the computers needed to be cleaned and sanitized. It was a full-scale operation. Looking back at how we were able to get ready so quickly, it just speaks to the way that people come together and step in jobs that aren't normally theirs. But that's the beauty of this school district, and I think that's why so many people love not just living and going to school here, but being part of this the school system. So I can't give enough praise to people, and sometimes I'll go off and start praising folks, and then I think back, I probably miss somebody because everybody's stepped in when they were needed the most and just did what they needed to do.
And I think while we're giving kudos and praising people, our child nutrition team and what they've been doing multiple times a week to serve so many kids and families meals has just been incredible. I think last Wednesday, they passed out, because they were passing out for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, since Friday was a holiday. They passed out, I believe it was over 5,000 meals combined. It was almost 1,000 kiddos and over about 5,000 meals combined. But they just are knocking it out of the park too, and being able to serve those kids.
Now, and for all of the parents who are online, anybody can come through, and no one should be embarrassed about going through the lunch line and picking up breakfast and lunch for your kiddos, because right now in these tight times, every little bit helps. So please spread the word that even if you weren't receiving free and reduced lunch before, the lunches that we're serving, we're not asking questions. We ask for the children to be in the car, because even in times like this, you do have your scammers. I was at one site last week, and one person drove up and wanted 8 meals, and there was nobody in the car. And we're not going to deny food to an individual. I think we gave that person at least 1 meal, because they were, obviously, if they came by, they must have been hungry. So we gave them the benefit of the doubt. But those are very, very unusual cases. We want to make sure that our families have what they need. So again, please pass the word. No one should be embarrassed, in whether you qualify or not. The lunch and the breakfast are there for any child in our community.
Yeah, and let me just encourage you, be sure you're checking with either the parent email that we send out weekly, or also the special crisis website that we've set up. And I'm sure all of you have been there, but if you haven't, it's just hipponation.org/coronavirus. And we have all of the pertinent information listed on that, including meal information. USDA and TDA, they kind of have changed a number of times over on what's required. But right now, and please know, we just have to follow their rules and their guidelines. So right now, they're requiring that you have some form of proof of being a student, or that you're picking up for a student. So, but that information's all on that website. There is a question: what is the plan for staff that cannot return because of medical concerns and/or conditions?
And just like our children or parents who have medical concerns, we have to treat our staff the same. And right now, because we don't know what the conditions are for returning, I don't know what kind of restrictions or guidelines the governor is going to impose on the state. It's very difficult for me to address that, but obviously we would extend that accommodation to our staff as well, especially if there's personal medical concerns. And I remember even during spring break, a couple of our teachers who are coming off cancer treatment, or who are dealing with, one person had a real severe case of diabetes, which places that person at high risk. And they were asking questions about if, you know, whether what we were going to do to try to protect her in the work setting. So there's a lot of unanswered questions just yet. And trust me, it's probably something we're going to be working through the weekend about and trying to make plans, because we've got a couple more weeks before that May 4th deadline. And again, all of us waiting to hear what kind of guidelines we're going to receive from the governor and the CDC and from our own Williamson County health community. Because we're all governed, yes, we're governed by the nation and the state, but then we're also under the direction of our county judge. That's been a learning experience. I never realized how much authority a county judge has during an emergency situation. So we've all learned about our local governments to a deeper degree.
Christina has a question. Christina, I just unmuted you, so go right ahead.
Yes. Question, like my daughter that is a senior. So if let's say one of her classes that she was failing before everything had happened, and I know she's trying to pick it up, is that gonna affect her with these grades and everything if we don't go back to school and she's trying to pick it up? I think the class was economics or something like that.
And Ms. Cruz, that as long as she is maintaining communication with her teacher, that economics course is only a semester, so obviously she's done half of the work. She should stay close to her economics teacher to make sure that she's doing everything she can to make up some of that work and then continue with the rest of the work for this semester. So the instructions that we've given our staff is that as long as students, in this case a high school, obviously, is making a full out good faith effort to try to keep up with the work, then that student will be given credit for that course. There are no grades this semester, but the ability to have that passing status. So the only time a student is going to fail in this environment is if they don't attempt any of the work. The parent doesn't step in and help where there's just zero cooperation, but we're trying to extend as much grace as possible. So I think if you've got any concerns about any feedback that you've been getting, first and foremost, talk to the teacher first, and then of course you can always call Mr. Burns or Mr. Christian over at the high school, and they'll be happy to help you with anything going on there.
Okay, so I know they're gonna go on the 21st to go pick up their caps and gowns and everything. Is that gonna be like the same way as the Chrome was doing it? They're gonna do it that way, or how?
Yes, I don't know the actual details of how Mr. Christian is going to organize that pickup, but I'm sure he'll do something very similar, more than likely by an alpha split, and give people time frames so that we don't have 600 kids showing up there at once, because we've got to maintain the social distancing and as kids are kids, we've got to make sure that we keep everybody in their cars and everybody's safe. Yes, ma'am, I think it'll look very similar to the Chrome distribution.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, another question from Valerie. She says, again, we don't know yet what will happen, but if kids do go back to school, will the students choosing to go back have to wear gloves and masks?
If that's part of the guidelines that are given, then yes. And I think even going into this fall, I think you're going to continue to see the presence of gloves and masks for several months, just based on what we've been hearing and reading about the nature of this disease. So there's a lot of science behind this COVID-19. And I would encourage you to stay close to those publications and come out from reputable sources, of course. But there's a lot of learning to be had with this whole COVID-19, because I'm sure it's not going to be the first health situation we're going to deal with.
Okay. Who else has a question?
I think, let me just emphasize this as well. Even before COVID-19, and Mr. Gideon can probably give a few more details, our district was very cognizant of the flu outbreak. And we began this year with, we had plenty of hand sanitizer, and we had already begun pretty stringent cleaning exercises of our facilities, of our classrooms, and of our equipment. So again, even before this COVID-19 outbreak, we were trying to do everything possible to minimize the outbreak of the flu. Now, we did a deep clean of the entire district during spring break. And so we're pretty confident about the cleanliness of our facilities. But once we reintroduce our children and our staff to the buildings, I think our way of cleaning is going to look differently. We're all going to have to take a hand and a responsibility in this, because obviously we don't have enough custodial staff to go around to do deep cleaning every single day, every single week. So every person in the district is going to have to take some personal responsibility for taking this on as well.
Amy King, I saw your message, and apologize to our staff. We sent this Zoom information out in our parent letter, but we forgot to include it in the staff letter. But I will let you know, just FYI, because you said please make it the parent email available to employees as well. All of these emails that go out to the parents, the weekly emails, both in English and in Spanish, are on our special coronavirus webpage. So if you go to the hipponation.org/coronavirus, every one of those emails that goes out is posted there. But our apologies for not sending this out. We put it on our Facebook page and we put it in the parent email, but we did forget to send it to staff. So we will do better next time.
Well, and I may look at hosting this spring. We were just speaking to our Amy, who's online, one of our staff members. This spring we had scheduled lunch meetings with all of our campuses, and obviously we've not been able to hold those. So I may reschedule those and just do those with each of the individual campuses, and give them some FaceTime with district leadership. But we'll do that separately.
And we very well might end up doing more of these table talks now that we're all getting much more comfortable with Zoom meetings. We normally have about 7 or 8 that show up on the table talks on the early morning coffee shops, but we have 28 on here, so this might
That's a record.
I know this might become a regular occurrence. I think we're all going to get more comfortable with doing these kind of meetings. So there's a lot of good that always comes out of bad things. We learn a lot. Who else has a question? Anybody? Cheney, do you have another one? Okay.
Hi, thanks. So just looking past our current situation, what are the plans for how we're going to assess students and their readiness for next year, and kind of tailor the beginning of next year to account for this, I don't want to say gap in education, because we're doing our best, but it's not the same as instruction delivered in the classroom and things like that. Obviously, it's not going to be as rigorous as what they would be in school. So what are we doing? What's the plan for assessment and kind of tailoring things to this particular situation upon our return?
Okay, great question. We are very much aware of the fact that while we're trying to do everything possible, our online learning is nowhere near going to replace the value of that face-to-face time with our teachers. But I know that our Dr. Sermani and his team have been grappling these very questions, have been addressing them. So I'm going to let him address that for us.
Yes, that's a key question. I was actually on a call yesterday evening with all the area assistant superintendents who have my position. So we were actually talking about that very question. There's a couple of ways of assessing the kids at the end, and I'm not sure what route we're going to take. One of them we can't even see yet. Actually, the Texas Education Agency is creating one that's optional for districts to use. I don't know what the parameters, I don't know what it covers. I just know it's going to exist soon. And so that's one option we have. There's also, of course, a more informal way of doing it using individual teachers, kind of like what pre-K and kinder already do. They always have to do some individualized assessments that are very subjective, but nonetheless, it's pretty accurate. So there's a number of ways of assessing kids as they're leaving where we're at. The other thing that's a little bit easier and we control, um, uh, you can only teach so much here at the end, and so you really kind of narrow down what we're trying to accomplish. And so knowing that we're only trying to accomplish certain things, we already know for a fact that we're skipping over some things. And that being said is a good starting point for our team, which is the curriculum writers, not this week, but next week, are going to begin to start looking at rewriting the beginning of the year curriculum for next year for all grade levels and subjects. And when I say that, a lot of that's going to be planning to bring teachers in to help do that job, just recognizing the fact that a lot of kids will have missed some things that they need. So certainly the first 6 weeks, first 12 weeks, maybe even the whole first semester of this coming school year is going to look different than it did this year or previous years, just simply because we know we're going to have to recover from some things that were missed. So there are a lot of ways to approach it and some plans. We also are meeting to talk about what we can do with some kids who we know have not really gotten much anything out of online learning, because there are those kids out there that this just is not working for them. And whether we can create a summer school tailored for certain groups of kids. And that all, again, depended on what the health situation is over the summer and whether we have staff that are able and willing to be here, whether we have students and parents who want their child to be in place and face-to-face learning over the summer. So that's
And that
kind
was
of
actually, sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, that was actually going to be kind of the piggyback question is, are we looking at extending the school year to allow for making up what we can or prioritize? Are we looking at the summer school option? Is that going to be made available to everyone or only select groups? Are we looking at extending the school days next year an hour? Like, what types of things are we looking at as possibilities to kind of make up for whatever intellectual losses, I guess, or gaps we may have?
Yeah. I mean, I say it any way you want to. There are gaps. There's stuff that got missed. Some kids aren't going to miss a beat. Some kids have missed a tremendous amount. And just like our online learning has to approach this with a number of different approaches, even within the same classroom, as a district, we're going to have a number of different approaches for our kids. Along with the along with everything you listed, everything's on the table to consider within what TEA will allow us to do. And there are some restrictions as to what we're allowed to do. Some of them have to do with teacher contracts. Some of them have to do with instructional minutes that we're required to cover, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that most of you probably aren't aware of, there's actually a number of different summer school operations we have to carry out that are both state mandated and federally mandated, which are not listed from the districts. Everything from ESL bilingual education we're required to have. We were notified that we have to have that still. I'm sure that'll change if the health situation changes. There's some federal requirements for students with disabilities that we need to accomplish over the summer that has not been lifted. So there's a number of operations going on regardless. And depending on what the health situation also determines what our capacity is to offer it. We may not be able to offer it to everyone. Maybe we are able to offer it to everyone. There are a lot of unknowns. So my plan right this second is to plan very broadly, like to be prepared as much as possible for anything that we might need able to do. And then as we get closer and closer to the end of the school year, we'll have more and more information where we'll be able to make some of these decisions moving forward. And so we are doing some planning on the background as much as possible, but I couldn't give you a firm answer right now as to what direction until I hear more from the governor and from TEA as to what's going to be allowed.
Okay, thanks.
One of the things, Dr. Thomas, I think it'd be insightful for you to give everyone a little peek into what goes on every day in terms of the conversations that you have, that you're part of with not only other superintendents, but, the commissioner, all of those folks. Dr. Sramani alluded to that he meets, he has conversations with other folks, colleagues around the area. I do as well in communication. So that might be a little helpful to know where all the information comes from.
Yes. Let's see. I'll try not to bore you with this. The first 2 weeks out of the chute with this crisis, we had daily phone meetings with our Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath. If y'all don't know him, he's a pretty special individual. He's done a great deal to keep the 1,200 superintendents in the state of Texas unified and informed and really quite responsive to all of our needs. There's a whole online learning curriculum at the state level that they developed for rural areas and for parts of the state that didn't have access to people in their own district that could develop online learning for kids. So from a state level, we've received a great deal of support and a great deal of direction from the commissioner. But obviously, he also acts and responds at the direction of our governor. So we all look to him, and he, of course, is collaborating with our president, since this is a nationwide event. Here locally, we meet. We have our today's Thursday, so Tuesdays and Thursdays. So at first, the first 2 weeks, we had a daily communication with our commissioner. Here last week, he started cutting back to Tuesdays and Thursdays. So every Tuesday and Thursday, we have a phone call with the commissioner, and then that's followed up with a conversation with just Region 13 superintendents. And then within the Region 13 superintendents, I meet with the WILCO, the Williamson County superintendents, because obviously the Region 13 has to work with Travis County, Hayes County, and Williamson County. That encompasses all of Region 13 and to some degree Gillespie County. So because we're under the direction of our county judge, I also have to collaborate with the superintendents from Williamson County. And then on another very special group, out of the 1,200 superintendents in the state of Texas, there's 200 that are women, and the women superintendents get together on another communication thread because we work so differently from the men, if you can believe that. And our way of leading and communicating and how we arrive at decisions is just, it's been a whole study in itself. So I'm pretty connected to all of the decision making that's taking place, and I think the types of questions that we ask and all the scenarios that we work through are pretty amazing. So we're right in line with staying up. For example, when Dr. Sramani and I had to develop the direction for the grading policy, we didn't do that in isolation. He was in communication with people at his level, and then I was in communication with superintendents and with policymakers, because obviously when we developed that grading policy, we had to do it in a way that was going to be beneficial for all students concerned, and also that was in line with what already existed in policy. So a lot of legal matters to stay on top of. So, I mean, that's just a lot of the edu-speak that's happening at my level. I think the most important takeaway from what I'm saying now is that we don't act in isolation. We collaborate with our partners. We collaborate with with other people who are experiencing the same situation. I'm in constant communication with our board of trustees. Here locally, we meet with all of our principals every Monday morning to kind of do a roll call and touch base about what's occurring on their individual campuses and what can we do to alleviate stress, both on our teaching fronts, our staff fronts, and both on the parents. So we are very sensitive to all of the feedback that you give your teachers and your principals, and we kind of try to bring that to a district level table and look at our policies and our practices. For example, one of the things that we're concentrating on now is really trying to scale back and really make sure that we are consistent in our messaging and consistent in how we deliver and how we roll out instruction. So we're not, one, overwhelming our parents and our families and also our teachers, because just like all of our parents who are also working from home and trying to take care of their children, our teachers have the same situation also. They're trying to teach and be in contact with their kids and also trying to take care of their own children. So it's a balancing act, and we don't always get it right. Obviously, we're all learning with this, but I love the fact that people are willing to pick up the telephone or send an email communication and talk and listen and try to problem solve together. So I've really appreciated that aspect of humanity, is that we all have to come together to do what's best for us personally, because if we don't take care of ourselves as adults, then there's no possible way for us to take care of our children, and they're the most important human beings to us right now. So I'll stop.
Thanks. So this Zoom meeting was scheduled till 12:30, and at 12:30 it's going to cut off automatically, unfortunately. So we are recording this, so we will be able to post it. Christina had said she had one more question. Christina, if you can make it a quick question, and then we will try to make an answer.
Yes, a question. When I was listening to that lady saying, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, but that the kids have to make up this time. So it's not like general that this is a world thing that's happening. So in general, these kids are going to have to make up the school time, or vice versa. You're going to start early, work more time, come out late for next year's school year. Because I mean, I have 2 kids in high school. Cece that graduates, and then another child.
Right. And no, we will be, because we are offering online learning, our children will not have to make up that time. This participating in the online learning is giving them, quote, credit for being in school. We are not going to have to make up the time. I think the question about possibly looking at calendars is really looking ahead to next year, because we know our children are going to have gaps and they're going to fall behind. The question was, have you considered calendars? Have you considered changing the curriculum? And so those were all just hypothetical discussions, just what if discussions. But no, our bottom line, children will not have to make up this time.
So this thing's about to cut off, so I'm going to have to cut us off. Thank you guys very much. We will post this. I'm not sure where we're going to post it, but we'll post it somewhere. Thank you all. It was great. We had 28 folks, and we will do this again. We appreciate all of your support as parents and staff, and we are better together. Hippo Nation is better together, and we're all going to get through this. So we will talk to you all later. Email us if you have any questions. Thanks. Have a great day.
Okay.